Yo, I'm Matt Forio, and this is Chisel This. Have you ever listened to a rap song and wondered how they came up with a line, or why does this sound so good, or why can't I match my own work to something of this caliber? A good way to learn is by deconstructing the verses of other rappers to unearth core fundamentals of lyric writing. I had the opportunity to speak a little with Dan Bull, and he recommended I try breaking down some well-known rap songs to make my commentary more relatable. So thanks to Dan for the idea. We're going to do this using the 4 rap verses in Forever by Drake, Kanye West, Lil Wayne, and Eminem. And also, I'll be rapping my own verse at the end, that's obligatory at this point, to encapsulate what we've learned. Hey, no! You need to think of a completed rap verse as a cake. Okay, we have a cake. There are certain ingredients baked inside of the cake that make it taste good, even though you can't necessarily see or detect them. For example, if you bake a strawberry flavored cake, you can't pull a whole strawberry out of it, but you can still taste the strawberry. That's the key medium that you need to achieve. Incorporating elements you can taste, but are integrated enough to blend with the whole verse. Today, we are going to do the impossible, and to withdraw entire fruits from this rap cake. The reason I chose Forever as the first song to try this with is because every verse is its own unique cake, making the entire song a bakery's worth of rap experience. And here are the flavors. We have Drake, the newcomer to the game, looking forward. We have Kanye, a veteran of the game, looking back. We have Lil Wayne, a seasoned player in the middle of his prime. And we have Eminem, a veteran of the game, reminding you he's still playing it. The premise of this song is to detail each rapper's relationship to the game, and tie in regular conventions of lyricism. You should know that this type of rap is a lyrical showcase, with a non-changing bass instrumental that allows the rappers to focus on writing instead of song direction. It also allows for many rappers to feature on one song while maintaining a sense of coherence. Clearly, these 4 individuals didn't all sit at a table and write their verses together. And the song design doesn't require that to be the case either. It's a cipher. Everyone gets the same amount of bars on the same beat. Have at it. In scenarios like this, rappers need guidance to start writing. What is the song about? And when there's not an all-encompassing theme or gimmick, rappers must choose their own outline. I think it's clear in this rap that each rapper structures their own verse around a certain key punchlines or rhyme schemes and then fills in the blanks here and there. It's a way to ration the amount of material and fill in the gaps with connecting rhymes. You can do this too by making notes out of context, whether you're walking around or at school or at work, and just you think of something, put it in your phone, write down those out of context punchlines and wordplay, and create a word bank out of them. Then you can pull from there to use for your lyrical showcase. That's what I'll be doing at the end of this video for the rap. I want you for a moment to think of film. When digital software became available, editors no longer had to physically cut and paste film next to each other. The style of non-linear editing was born, where filmmakers could both film and edit sequences out of order and rearrange them into one coherent film using digital technology. We can do the same thing with rap, and it's evident when you break these lines down that they did the same thing. So now it's time to see how they probably wrote each verse in Forever.
Last name ever, first name greatest. Like a sprained ankle, boy, ain't nothing to play with.
Every rapper in this song takes the first few lines to introduce himself. It's a safe way to start a verse, and it also acts as the launching pad for the first stanza. Here, Drake has 4 lines that rhyme with greatest. One of them, the second one, is a punchline. The rest of them take time to brag, which is a key marketing technique but not very demonstrative of lyrical genius. I found that most of Drake's verse is predicated on this predatory newcomer style, considering he has more to lose by going playful. You'll see how the tenure of the following rappers influences their writing.
In your city, faded off the brown.
Nino.
She insists she got more class.
We know.
Swimming in the money, come and find me.
Nemo.
If I was at the club, you know I balled.
Chemo. Pausing to emphasize a rhyme is effective and only if done right. And he does do it right here. This is because it turns every line into a punchline. Also, it must maintain the spondee stress pattern if it's 2 syllables, and perfect double rhyme scheme. This is relatively easy to do once you select a rhyme, like Nemo, and because of the emphasis of the rhyme itself, you don't have to find rhymes for the sentences before the rhymes, making this another safe writing tactic. You make every line, and then you tack on a rhyming word at the end of each line.
Drop the mixtape that sounded like an album. Who'd have thought a countrywide tour be the outcome? Labels want my name beside an X like Malcolm. Everybody got a deal, I did it without one.
Given the theme of Drake's verse, it's possible that he wrote these lines one by one, but I'm sensing we can pull a strawberry out of the cake here. The strongest line lyrically is, labels want my name beside the X like Malcolm, which generates very strong imagery of signing a contract on the printed line next to the X. It's very plausible that the connection to Malcolm X is something Drake thought of prior to this verse and non-linearly built a stanza out of it. So see how you can do it in the future. You have this line that you like, you throw it in the middle somewhere, and you build before and after it. You make one coherent, tasty cake. Not sponsored, by the way. The next stanza contains really nothing of lyrical significance, but it does show how to end a verse. Yeah, I'm about my business. A threat, a potent statement, a cliffhanging thought, or an exclamatory revelation are all good tools to end a verse with. Drake's last line has a touch of each of these, and it generates a lingering desire for inclusion among his audience.
If you ain't been a part of it, at least you got to witness.
This verse can be flow-charted as such. Describe how I'm the best in 4 lines. Emphasize the Nemo chemo rhyme scheme for 4 lines. Describe the come up in 4 lines using the idea of having my name next to an X like Malcolm X. Make doubters repent for 4 lines. You can draw out this flowchart either before or after. I think that for me personally, it's rather involuntary, and making the flowchart is kind of an extra step that I don't need to take. But if that would help you by making that flowchart and saying, I want to say this here and this here, I want to get from point A to point B and point C, and that's how I'll make a coherent story, then you write it out like that. Like I said, I think Drake's is the most marketable of the verses, but we'll see what the other rappers think of marketability moving forward.
Ever Mr. West is in the building, ain't no question who about to kill him.
Again, this opening is easy. Mr. West just takes the opportunity to introduce himself.
Ever Mr. West is in the building, ain't no question who about to kill him. I used to have hood dreams, big fame, big change. I stuck my dick inside his life until that came.
Kanye starts developing a story with these lines, and it actually progresses throughout the verse. There is a start, middle, and end here, and it's something you should strive for when writing a coherent verse. First, he dreams of the life. Then he goes so hard that he figuratively assaults the game to get that life. Then he notes that he gained notoriety and fame at a price. His friends were fake. He lost some family members. He turned into a maniac, and eventually decided that this life wasn't worth all the dreaming. It's almost a tragically written verse, but there are some valuable techniques inside that we can continue looking for.
And went hard all fall like the ball teams, just so I could make it rain all spring.
Okay, I swear he said offspring here for like the last 8 years, which would have added so many layers to this line. So just for the sake of teaching you something here, let's pretend that he said offspring. Let's pretend I have this line in my head. I make it rain like offspring, using the term rain to mean actual precipitation, money, and sperm. But if you break the words apart, offspring means it's not during spring. So he wants to describe how he can make it rain even during the seasons that are not known for the rain. In doing so, he mentions how he goes hard like sports teams do in the fall. This is good backwards thinking. And using these lines is much more effective when you reverse the order that you came up with them. Think of it as writing comedy, only to be more poignant and thoughtful than humorous.
Y'all seen my story, my glory. I had raped the game young. You could call it statutory when a nigga blow up. They gon' build statues from me.
It's clear which line Kanye builds this stanza around. He raped the game young as if it were a statutory rape, even though he means that he himself was young at the time of said metaphorical behavior. The way he says it still sparks that joke in our brains. He clearly was influenced by the word statutory to say statue in the next line, and then he concludes this portion of the story, yada yada. It's more of a downhill experience than a hard punchline at the end, and you don't have to put a punchline at the end of every 4 lines. That's the key. Part of making a rap that is good and emotionally pleasing is that it's a roller coaster. It goes up and down in different places. When you have the punchline in the first line, and it's always in the first line, then it's predictable. But you have it in the first, then the third, then the fourth, then the second, and then you have something going for you.
Super bad chicks giving me McLovin'. You would think I ran the world like Michelle's husband.
Okay, using a one-line long punchline is a good way to shift gears in a verse without enough time to shift them. That joke starts and ends in the first line. Props to Kanye for continuing the McLovin rhyme scheme and tying in even more progression of his story with this stanza at the same time.
Trade the Grammy plaques just to have my granny back. Remember she had that bad hip like a fanny pack.
This line speaks a lot and also shows how one idea can spark a flow of rhymes that lasts the remainder of a verse. Incorporating more story, he draws this dynamic between the Grammys and his granny. Very wide dynamic range to demonstrate what really matters to him in life, and then he continues the rhyme scheme to finish off. Creating a dynamic range like that is really important because it puts the viewer here, and then within seconds it puts them over here, and they have to fill in what's in between. What's in between Kanye's grandmother and Kanye's Grammys? And when he says that he would trade the Grammys just to have his grandmother back, it really shows you the inside of his heart. It's like, man, I would give all that away just to have this family connection back. And like I said, it's very sad, and you resonate with that. Even if it's not really a sad song, it still means something.
Chasing the stardom will turn you to a maniac. All the way in Hollywood, and I can't even act. They pull their cameras out, and God let me snap. I used to want this thing forever, y'all can have it back.
Okay, well, fanny pack, maniac, act, damn he snap, have it back, all easy rhymes that allow him to tell more story in the remainder of his lines. You can even take inspiration in thinking how to make double entendres out of short rhymes like snap, where Kanye reveals he snaps when cameras are snapping. This verse can be flowcharted as such. Introduce myself in 2 lines. Start the storytelling in the next 2 lines. Describe my come up using the fall, spring, make it rain dynamic that I had in my notepad. Describe crassly for poignant effect how I made it in 4 lines. Brag for 2 lines, but then make a U-turn in the story at the end of the stanza. Quickly diss doubters. Use the Grammy Granny parallel to describe how the game wrong-footed me, and then wrap up final thoughts on that sour note. You can see how Kanye is much more at liberty to complain and brag at the same time, given he has developed credibility at this point in his career. Lil Wayne takes that creative freedom to a different level.
Okay, hello, it's the Martian. Space Jam Jordans. I want this forever. Wake up and smell the garden.
It's clear how Wayne uses his nickname as a springboard for the first stanza. Everything rhymes with Martian, and it's rather non sequitur, step up to the target, fresher than the harvest. Nothing to do with each other, but it's just like that rapid fire rhyme thing. He also reiterates the song title in an effort to create relevancy.
And I will never stop like I'm running from the cops. Hopped up in my car and told my chauffeur to the top. Life is such a fucking roller coaster, then it drops. But what should I scream for? This is my theme park.
Even if it was not conceived first, Wayne makes this whole stanza about the roller coaster terminology. The first 2 lines are relevant enough to not steer away from the idea of moving. He's running, driving, and riding a roller coaster. Lil Wayne is dependable for these quirky phrases that people decide to live by. What should I scream for? This is my theme park. And you know what? He's right. You own your own world, so enjoy the ride and take control of it as much as you can. This is a creative way to maintain imagery while saying something rather generic. I run the show here.
My mind shine even when my thoughts seem dark. On my side, you don't wanna hear that thing talk.
The content of these lines is inspired by the rhymes he found for Theme Park. I want to make clear that it's most likely the only reason why these lines exist, and you can do something like this to have a rhyme and then not necessarily know where you want to go, but the rhymes for that rhyme can point you in a certain direction. Once you come up with seem dark, it's relatively easy to jump to the point of opposites and talk about something bright. And double rhymes are tough to get out of, especially in the middle of 4 bars, so continuing the rhyme scheme at the beginning of the 3rd line, but then changing it, keeps our gears turning. Pistol on my side, you don't wanna hear that thing talk. When I'm out shopping, better... See, now, I lost your attention there. Those kinds of transitions are good tools to use when you want to shift gears.
I'm like Nevada in the middle of the summer. I'm resting in the lead, I need a pillow and a cover. My foot sleeping on the gas. No brake pads, no such thing as last.
I think the image of Lil Wayne so effortlessly staying in first place is responsible for the next 4 lines. If the writer can visualize something, he can put it into words. And what I visualize is Lil Wayne resting on the pillow in the driver's seat of a race car on a speedway while a baby's mobile spins on the ceiling. If your brain is creative enough to generate images, lyricism is never far. Because that's how I come up with 90% of my lyrics. I see this image in my head, and it's so hard for me to describe how I do this because it's so involuntary, but I see this image, and I take that image and I try to find the best way to describe what I'm seeing. It makes so much sense in my head, but I literally cannot verbalize it until I take the time to think and write it out. And that's why I'm 100% against freestyling, because it's antithetical to at least what my brand of rap is. This verse can be flowcharted as such. Introduce myself and find loosely connected things that rhyme with my nickname for 4 lines. Build structure around the idea of life being a roller coaster while I own the theme park for 4 lines. Got that from my notepad too. Continue rhyming whatever I came up with for the previous idea and add question marks to that part, I'll finish it later. Describe the image of myself effortlessly speeding by in first place. You're seeing how easy this is and how mindless it can be. I mean, maybe it takes a little bit longer than it does for me to describe it to actually come up with this stuff, and I'm sure that it does because that happens for me too. But the raps turn out so well and so loved. Maybe it's because of the positioning of their rhymes and the way that they pace themselves. They constantly switch it up. If you're having trouble switching it up, rap as much of the verse as you can, and then continue mumbling without words. Your groove will point you in the right direction. Now, Eminem's verse differs from everyone else's. I'm sure Eminem didn't want to use any of the hard-hitting verses he had tucked away on the laptop in his back pocket on this feature, so here's what he did. This entire verse emulates a stream of consciousness flow. There's not one line that I can pin down and say that's something he planted before he started writing. It also seems that no lines are independent of each other, meaning you can't really take them out of the verse and call them great punchlines out of context. In that sense, the verse is well homogenized, but I also think it shows that Eminem kept his most precious eggs in his own basket this time around. Let's check it out.
There they go, back in stadiums, his shady spits his flow. Nuts they go, macadamian they go, so ballistic, whoa. He can make them look like bozos, he's wondering if he should spit this slow. Oh no, go for broke, his cup just runneth over, oh no.
Where Eminem shines in this verse is the wicked flow he creates. The beginning of this verse explains why he's doing it too. It appears he doesn't have anything to gain, but he does have something to lose. And that something is his own dignity. Whereas Drake's verse is much more mainstream, Eminem's is wicked and kind of spits in the face of the idea of dumbing yourself down for cultural acceptance.
He ain't had him a bust like this since the last time that he overdosed. They've been waiting patiently for Pinocchio to poke his nose back into the game, and they know rap will never be the same as before. Bashing in the brains of these and establishing a name as he goes.
Eminem usually pioneers his lines on multi-syllabic rhyming. And in fact, if you look closely, all he needed to do here was come up with these rhymes, and that completed the stanza. Each line nearly rhymes with the next perfectly. This is a complete 180 from Drake's verses and Kanye's, where they rhymed the last word and spoke story in the interim. Instead, Eminem is rhyming the whole stanza at the expense of a little narration.
The passion and the flame is ignited, you can't put it out once we light it.
Notice how Eminem continues the rhyme scheme from the last stanza and changes the last word to shift gears. It's a really good way to switch up the rhyme scheme but keep the energy moving.
You dealing with a few true villains who stand inside of the boot, true spilling and spit true feelings until our true feelings come flying up out of our mouths, never mind it.
It seems that his MO at this point is to spit such a wicked flow that you can't comprehend it. This is evidenced by how he tells you to rewind it.
Never mind it.
If you try to create an on-tempo yet irregular beat with your hands and replace those beats with rhyming hitboxes, you can replicate what Eminem does here. Back into the game and they know, rap will never be the same as before. Fashion in the brains of these hoes, establishing the name as he goes.
I'm Hannibal Lecter, so just in case you're thinking of saving face, you ain't gonna have no face to say by the time I'm through with this place, so Drake.
Eminem's personality is one of hostility. Whichever personality you have, if you own it, your lines will suit it. That's what he does at the end by comparing himself to a villain. The uniqueness of Eminem compared to the other rappers is that he abuses the beat as if he were an actual villain. See, he adds extra beats of emphasis that the instrumental lacks with his stressing. Has a taste, shakes the place, saving face to save, play so Drake. It's not album, outcome, Malcolm, out one. The beat does not contain that rhythm, but he adds it in there himself. Instead of the beat telling him where to rhyme, Eminem tells the beat where he's going to rhyme. Look at it this way, Eminem has a lot of opportunity to have a lot of fun. You figure he's rapped in so many songs, he wants to try something new every time, so he kind of just goes wherever his groove is telling him to go. Me personally, I don't prefer to write that way, because as you can see, Eminem sacrifices a narrative story for more wicked sounding rhythm and intricate rhyming. I'd rather tell stories. But notice how whatever he does with his wicked flow, he still stays within the parameters of a natural flow, at least. You can't motor mouth over an instrumental and think it will work just if you stay on beat. It bothers me so much when people take too long to say a line and they wind up saying the fourth line at the beginning of what should be the next stanza's first line. Eminem knows how to beat irregular and not do that. His stanzas will begin and end within each 4-bar meter, but he plays around with what's inside of it. It's like going on a cruise. Eminem is there for arrival on the island. He goes swinging from tree to tree and hang gliding while everyone else is on a guided tour, and he's back in time for departure. This verse can be flowcharted as such. Go insane and get home for dinner. You can develop your own style and own it the way Eminem owns his. You don't have to copy, but you can learn. Now, let's use some of these structure building tactics that were present in this song to make our own verse. First is our direction. So where am I in the rap game? What, this little corner sectioned off in this abstract limbo across the Rubicon, doing a Van Damme split over a fissure where a cavalcade of teeth-gnashing dwellers of the hip-hop head subreddit await with Molotov cocktails and wireless microphones ready to riot? That might have been too specific. To translate, I'm not necessarily in the game, so we can write our story based on vying for a place in the game. See if you can detect some of the ingredients we unearthed from the bakery in this verse. I really hate writing in the mainstream style, so it's kind of jokey and goofy, but you'll still see some tactics that Drake, Kanye West, Lil Wayne, and Eminem used in Matt Forio's verse. Enjoy.
They call me M4Y, and with 4 eyes I see you. If you can't see me, hit the ICU. Seated on your pedestal like you're some high priest, dude. Bet you never knew that I'm the queen of Sheba Inu. I could write a song now with the top chart sound, but the kings know how they can knock a pawn down. I can scream, I can shout with my pen drawn out, but if I'm clapping at a concert, then I'm in the wrong crowd. Get loud like a mute cry, higher than a shoe fly. Gotta build the tallest tower ever, and it's due by noontime. And by the signs I see at dawn of moonlight, tonight these fruits and I are gonna have a food fight. You jar full of marshmallow frosting, you're awful. My fault that your girl's got more X-Men than Marvel. Apart from her past, if she's quite the big spender, make like your ugly old jeans and suspenders. I spit with the heat of a sun, but I still find I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. If I sign, then I will get a deal and I'm muzzle, but if I sit still, then I'm beat by the struggle. If I beat up now, I could be a contender. All my fans will be repeat offenders. If you want me to surrender, I will be blessed, even if it means I'm sneezing forever.
My album is coming out this summer. It's very provocative. There are 3 singles out already. Watch them. Look forward to Foreignology. I'm Matt Forio, and that's all for you today.